here's Ed Bernstein.
Hey, my guest today is the voice of common sense, Alan Stock from KDON. You know, there's an old saying that if common sense was so common, everybody would have it.
Well, that's true, but I like to think that we like to look at things from the most logical point of view. But I'd like to start this whole thing off by congratulating you because you were recently inducted into the Nevada Broadcasters Association's Hall of Fame. I was there when that happened.
Right.
So congratulations to you.
Well, thank you. You do something long enough and you live long enough and all of a sudden people, oh yeah, he's still alive. But you know, you've recently, you've been doing some shows. You came back from an incredible trip in Israel at a time, in a historical moment that, and you were really potentially, you know, could have been shelled there, and right? I mean, you could have been attacked. Could have been missiles flying over your head in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
What was that like?
We got there on Saturday, July 5th, on Tuesday, July 8th. After we had been to Masada that day, we went back to the apartment. We were on in the 7th floor of a 7-story apartment in Jerusalem, right above what's called Ben Yehuda Street, the big shopping area. And if you open the door to the balcony, you could look out and see the entire city. And I was sitting watching the news at night, and because there had been shelling going on from Gaza into the southern part of Israel, some of the communities there, Sderot and Beersheba and places like that, and we were watching TV, and all of a sudden I heard these sirens come on. And my first thought was, this is like police siren or ambulance, but didn't go away. So I went up to the door of the balcony and I opened it up, and I looked out to Jerusalem, and the whole city was blaring with the siren. 3 rockets came over the Iron Dome, destroyed 2. 1 must have gone in the desert somewhere. And I turned to Rhoda and I said, this is the beginning of the war. And it was right after that that Netanyahu, in fact, sent the Air Force in to start bombing Gaza. And so we were there for the very beginning of this war.
Now, you were staying in a residential area, so you're in a building with other residents. So did you have to go to shelters, or what kind of information were they giving to people who live there?
2 interesting things. One is that after the first initial shelling, that's when we got a text or an email saying, oh, by the way, your bedroom is your safe room. And I could figure that. It's all steel, and the door and the windows closed, locked in the steel. So that was the safe room. I didn't go because I wanted to watch what was going on. I mean, I was more interested in that. The last Friday, 2 weeks later, the last Friday that we were there, we went to Tel Aviv. We stayed at the Hilton right on the water of the Mediterranean, and we had just begun to unpack everything, and the siren went off again, and a voice comes over in the loudspeaker in each room saying, please move, you know, swiftly and methodically, like to the stairwell and go down 1 level. And Rhoda says, okay, well, let's go. And I go, I'm not going anywhere. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is history. I'm watching this. Our balcony faced the north, like towards Netanya, and Gaza was behind us, so I felt fairly safe. Well, she went in that stairwell at that point. I went out in the balcony and watched what was going on, and some of the rockets went out into the Mediterranean, and Ed, people were down there surfing while all this was going on.
Just another day at the beach.
Just another day in Tel Aviv. You know, it's happening, it'll be over soon, and then that's it. Got to catch the wave.
Now, unlike in previous times, there would be gas masks that were handed out, and all the Israeli citizens would be wearing gas masks. I mean, it wasn't a threat with chemical weapons at all?
They said no. The issue was the rockets mostly that were being fired from Gaza. And the first night that we had that rocket come over in Jerusalem on the 8th, they also went over to Tel Aviv and as high as Haifa, which is way north of Tel Aviv on the coast, and they also went up to the Golan. They went up to the Golan. The Iron Dome takes them out if it perceives it to be over a populated area. Otherwise, if it's over water or in the desert, they let it go. Interesting quick note, I thought you'd be interested in this, that they have 9 of these Iron Domes, and they're all set up with the rockets, and then to take out the rockets from Gaza. And it's all computerized. And when a computer senses that it's going to come in a certain area, the computer says to this Iron Dome or whichever one's closest, go after it, and it does. In one case recently, the Iron Dome, and it's 90% accurate, one time recently, one guy was operating the computer, and he said the Iron Dome failed. So what it does, it goes to the computer, sends it to the next one closest. This one failed. After that, it sent it to the third one closest, and that's it. That one failed, which is unusual. And they watched the rocket go over, and it was going to go over a populated area, and the guy said it was like the hand of God did this, and it actually just came down and it moved over and dropped in the desert and didn't hit anyone at all. So a lot of spirituality connected with this whole war going on.
The Iron Dome is American technology.
American and Israeli joint venture, yeah.
Right. So what happens, you know, if the other, let's say Hamas, you know, they have a lot of money now. You know, they go out and they purchase the technology for themselves to get Iron Domes.
You know what's interesting is Hamas is given money by the international community. They were given money after Israel pulled out and gave it to them. And as soon as Israel pulled out, the Palestinian Arabs destroyed the hothouses that would provided food. They destroyed the a power plant that provided electricity so they could sell the copper off to make money. They got money from the international community to develop schools to buy, and they bought concrete and the like. And they could have built schools, they could have done a lot, but they took the money instead and they put them in the tunnels, which you've seen, which everyone's seen now. They put them in the tunnels, and to build tunnels so they could get into Israel and kidnap and kill Jews in Israel. And of course, one of the big issues while we were there, they had actually found out and they had stopped what was planned to have been a huge attack on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the Jewish New Year, this coming September, and they were going to actually go after Jews who were praying, and they were going to either kidnap them or kill them. So this is what they put the money into. Could they put the money into the Iron Dome or something like that? They could put money into education, into housing, and all kinds of things, but they put them instead into trying to kill the Jews, and that's why Israel is as defensive as they are.
Now, you would think with all the attacks, all the wars that residents of Israel go through, that they would, you know, why do they stay? Why do Israelis stay in Israel with,
you know,
with this kind of tension?
It's a pioneer spirit. We talked to people who were Americans who had moved there. Matter of fact, my cousin moved there just several months ago. His wife had been there, and you know, she had been going back and forth, and he finally moved there, lock, stock, and barrel, and he's there. And they live in Jerusalem, about 2 miles from where we were staying. And their attitude is, it's a pioneer spirit that's spiritual. It's the Jewish homeland. They want to be there. You're not going to run us out of our homeland. And again, we're here to stay. And they're willing to fight. They don't want to. They'd rather, you know, pray, and they would rather have fun and enjoy things, but they are forced to fight.
Is life more difficult there today than it was in 1967 when they fought a war?
I wasn't there in '67. I was there in '01 in February, right after the second Intifada started. And, you know, there is unemployment. To answer your question directly, I would say in some ways life is tough. On the other hand, they live a more sparse life. My cousin said to me, he's a Hasidic rabbi there now. He said to me, we're the poorest we've ever been in our lives, but I'm the happiest we've ever been here. So, I mean, you know, they're trading one for the other. There are a lot of people going on the streets of the Midrachov of the Ben Yehuda Street where we're staying, and constantly coming up to you asking for shekels, and you give them because that's the way it's done over there as opposed to how a lot of people do it here.
But on the other hand, there's a lot of wealth there generated from some of the technology companies. I mean, Israel's at the forefront of the cutting edge of a lot of technology.
There are factories up there that produce. We were at one factory in the Samara area that produces plastic and plastic extrusion, chairs, toiletries, and things like that. We toured the SodaStream factory. You know, Scarlett Johansson was very famous for what happened.
SodaStream is the company that produces different flavors of do-it-yourself at home.
Carbonated water, right, exactly, right. Cokes or whatever it is. And so we toured that factory. And these factories I mentioned are you have to go through the Palestinian areas to actually get there. They're like Jewish settlement areas, but they're surrounded by Palestinian areas. And so there's hostility. People want to boycott SodaStream, and there's a boycott movement out to stop boycotting. But here's the irony. At SodaStream and this other factory we went to, you have Israeli Jews and Palestinian Arabs, Muslims working side by side, making money, working. The Palestinians, if they were to go to work, first month's work as a teacher, let's say in Ramallah or one of those areas, it's 1,200 shekels a month. Going to work for one of these factories, 4,500 shekels a month, regardless of who you are. And they're treating it, and plus every shift gets a warm meal. Every shift gets a warm meal. Plus they have picnics, trying to get the families together to interact on a non-political, non-religious basis, but just get to know each other as people, so they don't, see them as the enemy trying to kill me.
Yeah, I find it amazing that Israel built a hospital on the border there to essentially to service injured Palestinians.
They did that, and also there's a hospital that they have up north, not far from the Golan, where with the Syrian war going on, all the children who've been maimed, these people can't get treatment for their kids in Syria, so they bring the kids into Israel, and they're treated by doctors in Israel for free. And they stay at this hospital as long as they need to. The doctors track them the rest of their lives, free medical care. A lot of these people are afraid to go back to Syria because, well, where did you get your kid healed? Well, in Israel. Or you were with the Jews. Well, kill them, that kind of a thing. So they have to be quiet about it. But that's what Israel's doing. One more quick thing that's fascinating. I mean, I don't understand the Israeli mind sometimes, but one of the rockets that came out of Gaza came over into Israel and hit a power plant that supplied electricity to 70,000 Gaza homes. Now, these are while the rockets are going up to Jerusalem and up to Tel Aviv, and they hit one of the power plants that provides the electricity to 70,000 Gaza homes. What do you think the Israelis did?
They repaired it?
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately they repaired it. They were, and while the rockets were being, they were sending food into Gaza. Food for the people and dog food for the dogs. They were actually doing that. I don't quite get it. I mean, they
But you don't hear about this in the media.
Not the mainstream media does not cover it, and that's what ticked me off. And I had the chance to be able to call in and do a half-hour report every day with the folks who were subbing for me and let them know what was really going on. I mean, we were there, we saw the stuff, saw it with our own eyes. When something else that's mind-boggling. Before they actually, they find through a drone, they'll find where rockets are being fired. The Hamas will take and fire a rocket from one house, and then they take the rocket to the next house, and then to the next house, so you don't know where it's going on.
With their own wheels that are movable.
With their, exactly.
Launchers, right?
The Israeli drones find them. So they say to the community there, they drop millions of leaflets, get out because we're coming in. Then they call them. They have the phone numbers of the people in Gaza. Call them up. Get out while the getting's good. Then they turn around. They drop the equivalent of a cherry bomb on the top of a house.
A warning.
A warning. They've had 3 warnings, and finally, after that point, they go ahead and they blow the structure up. But the Hamas tells the people there, "Don't you move. You stay right there. Don't listen to the Israelis." Just a couple weeks ago, there were 20 that objected to staying there. The Hamas took them out in the street and they killed them. They shot them and they killed them and left the bodies there, saying to the others, "This is what will happen to you."
Why is it? I mean, the numbers that I hear is like there's maybe a few thousand Hamas terrorists that essentially are ruling. But how many people are in? 2 million, 3 million people there.
In the Gaza, I think it's about 1.5 million, right around something like that.
I mean, you have 1.5 million people there. I mean, why don't they stand up? I mean, they have to see. I mean, I understand Hamas does give, in addition to creating the terrorism that they do, they also have some humanitarian work they do for the Palestinians. They give them some food, they give them some schools, and of course, it's the education they get is is a different story, but. So they have, some sort of control over the Palestinians, but the Palestinians, I would think, look at the situation and say, hey, we need to get rid of these guys and rule ourselves.
The Hamas have the weapons, they have the guns, and they have them pointed at people. Your kids, do you want to see your kids die? Then you're going to do what we tell you to do. And the people react to that. 70% of the Palestinians in a poll that was taken just as we got to Israel, this was taken by the Washington Institute, over here, not in Israel, 70% of the Palestinians want to get along with Israel, want to stop all the nonsense. Let's live side by side in peace. 70%. So you got 30% supporting the Hamas. And the Hamas is, they're controlling what goes on down there out of terror. And the people have to respond or they're killed. I have pictures of Hamas taking children by the back of the shirt and actually putting them up on a fence in front of where the rockets are going to be fired. And they hang them on the fence, not with their skin, but with their shirt. And they hang them up there, and the kids are screaming. They're terrified because these kids are going to be the kids who are being sacrificed, literally. And they all know it. When the rockets hit from Israel, to be able to respond, from the rockets being flown into Israel, those kids will die. And I've seen the Hamas directives. I've seen them. The Hamas directives say anyone who dies, everyone is a civilian. We always refer to them as civilians, no matter what their rank or situation. They're all civilians. Always try to be able to talk about the children and the women and show as many dead bodies of children in your arms as possible. And that's why they do this. They follow through with the directives or they themselves are killed.
Yeah. And I heard a news report that they were actually bringing in dead children from Syria, saying that they were part of the Israeli attacks. It's just so frustrating, and particularly, obviously everybody looks at Israel. Most people think they have a right to defend themselves, and
they do. They don't have a right to defend themselves. I don't agree. They have an obligation. That's right, to defend themselves. What would we do if rockets were being fired from Mexico or south of the border into California, Arizona, Texas, or New Mexico? How would we react to it?
Well, we know what we did when a couple airplanes were,
there you go,
flew into buildings. But it's, it's just a very frustrating situation. I wanted to change topics, lighten it up. Well, maybe not lighten it up a little bit. Kerry Kasem's, Casey Kasem's daughter, who was your partner on the radio for a long time. She was in town last week on your show. This is, you go onto the E! channel or TMZ, it's all about Casey Kasem. What's really going on there?
What happened was Carrie and I were co-hosts together about 7 years ago, and when she came back last week, we did co-host the show together, and it was like we had never stopped. It went as smooth as you can imagine. And she was here for the Nevada Broadcast Association Gala, where you were inducted, and she was there to, they honored the people who had passed away during the last year. The last one they mentioned was Casey Kasem, her father, and she got up to thank the Nevada Broadcast Association and Bob Fisher for honoring her father this way and to remembering him. What happened, she used to tell me these stories when we were co-hosting together. What's happening is that Casey and his wife divorced. Casey and his wife had 3 children, Carrie and her brother and sister. He and his wife divorced. He remarried a gal named Jean, and for 34 years this woman controlled his life and made life a living hell for Carrie and her siblings to not be able to get to see Casey. She would talk to her father on the cell phone, but if they would go to the door to see him, the door would be slammed in their face. They would not allow her in the house. So she never got to see him. And as times went on and his health deteriorated, they were concerned, wanted to see him. And she wouldn't let the siblings see him, her and her siblings, or his siblings, or any of their friends. No one could see him. At the very, very end, she got the custody, medical custody, I guess, to be able to direct his medical treatment.
Right.
And when they went down to see him, Jean had taken him at 2 o'clock in the morning out of this facility, and it spirited him away. First they came to Vegas, and then they went up to Washington. And when Carrie finally found them up there, they got court orders, they got the police and everything, and they actually went in to take him to the hospital. By that time he had bed sores and had deteriorated. The judge looked at the information that came from the doctors and said, it's up to you to do what you want to do. And he was being fed food and water through tubes. The water was actually causing him to almost suffocate and drown. And so he could not ingest any of that. And she made the decision, based upon the doctor's advice, Carrie did, to then at that point withhold water and food, knowing that he would die. But again, the wicked stepmother is the one who created this whole situation, and when he did pass away, the stepmother took the body and spirited it away. He was supposed to be buried in L.A. where he wanted to be buried, so people could come see the gravesite and all. And she took the body away to Montreal somewhere, and nobody knows quite where. But Carrie and her siblings have a great vision on this whole thing, because she said, "My father is with me now, all the time, and she can never take him away again."
Right. But she's also working on some legislation. What is that all about?
This legislation is, you know a lot more about law than I do, but the legislation is such that you can't right now go in Nevada or California and say, "I want to see my father" in a situation like this. They'll say, "Well, you know, it's up to your step." Yeah, exactly. So what do? It's impossible. The legislation that's working its way through the California legislature that will be introduced here next February says that a child has a right in this situation to go to court and to petition to be able to see that parent. That's all. It doesn't say they have to see them, but they're allowed to go and petition, which they're not allowed to do now.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, years ago the issue was whether grandparents would have, you know, visitation rights for their grandchildren when the parents got divorced.
Yep.
This is kind of, you know, the converse of that, of the children wanting to see the parents or grandparents, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the one other member of the duo, the stepfather, stepmother, whatever it might be, saying, no, you can't do that. So this legislation would allow kids literally to petition the court. It's not that the court will say automatically you can,
right,
but the court then can allow a petition and say, well, present evidence, let's see, and then the court can make a decision to allow the child to visit that parent or not. And that's all the legislation does. It's simple. And it should easily pass in California, be signed by the governor, and again, will be introduced here. There are two people who are co-sponsoring it in the legislature, Michelle Fiore and John Hambrick. They're going to bring it to the legislature, and I'm sure we'll have more co-sponsors before the legislature gets into session next February.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. I mean, why
common
not
sense,
let
back to how we started, common sense.
Any family member, you know, petition to see another family member, just give them the rights to get into court, and let a judge decide the validity of it.
Common sense, no-brainer. I mean, that's what it comes back to, exactly. So.
Yeah. Talking about common sense,
Yeah.
We have a big, you know, immigration issue, problem. We have, you know, for years this has been on the national political agenda. We have 50 to 100,000, I don't know what the numbers are, children and women that have come from Central America. What is the common sense approach to that?
Common sense approach is, one, seal the borders first and foremost. If you're in a ship in a little boat and it's got a hole in it and water's coming into the boat, you don't think about what you're going to have for dinner that night. What you're going to do is you're going to try to stop the leak right now before you do anything. So we've got to seal the borders, number one. Number two, I think we've got to go back to what we used to have that worked. And why people got rid of it, I don't know. I know former Governor Wilson of California was instrumental in getting rid of it. It was like the Bracero program. And this is where people actually came over, came in groups, worked in groups, lived in groups, and then returned to their country with their money intact. The crimes by any of these people were far and few between. Crimes against them were far and few between. It worked. It worked so well. This was under the Eisenhower administration, you know, going to the Kennedy administration. It worked so well. And then Pete Wilson came aboard. I guess he listened to too many Joan Baez songs about Braceros, and he wound up initiating legislation to get rid of the Bracero program. And at that point, the illegal immigration issue increased exponentially. I mean, he did other things, you know, to deal with illegal immigration, Prop 187 in California, and things like that. But that was his doing and others doing. It was a huge mistake. Bring a Bracero program back, allow people to work here, do it right, and get the system for people to immigrate here who are waiting in line, doing it the right way. Get that system going so people can wait in line, do it the right way. How would it be if you're standing in line to get in with your family and you've been doing it the right way, you dotted your I's, you crossed the T's, you're a nice, honest guy, and you're waiting in line. These people are coming across, and these come illegally, and they're getting to stay, and they're getting benefits. They're getting food stamps and education, and they're getting medical treatment. Here you are still with your family going, what about me? So, I mean, you know, we've got to be able to fix that process, seal the borders, and then immigration reform in general.
This is not only a problem in this country. I mean, this is a problem over Europe as well. I mean, you have essentially people fleeing these countries where, you know, third world countries that are essentially run by, you know, heartless dictators and assorted other characters like that, where there's a lot of terrorism, a lot of economic terrorism. There's, you know, killings, there's discrimination, there's, you know, I mean, there's a lot of terrible things going on. So you have a lot of these people are just innocent, just trying to make a life for themselves and their family. You know, so now that they're here, you have an idea of what we should do now that they're here?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. And I think the only answer is to seal the borders first, and then I think at that point you get both sides willing to talk about what to do with them. Are we going to scoop all these people up and take them back to their country of origin? Whether people like it or not, the answer is probably going to be no. What about the criminals that we're allowing to stay here, who've been here, come over the border, you know, 10, 12 and more times, and they've been convicted of felonies? Obviously, these people should either be in prison or we should export them. So, I mean, it's going to take some doing, but both sides have to work on it, seal the borders, and then sit down and let's get serious. This president, unlike the prior Democrat president who was in office, Bill Clinton, does not know how to reach across the aisle. Ronald Reagan could do that. Bill Clinton could do that, a Republican and a Democrat, so it's not partisan either way. This president does not know how to reach across the aisle, and that's part of the problem.
And if you're interested in hearing more common sense, right, KDAWN 720 on the radio, what time in the morning?
6 to 9 every morning.
6 to 9.
You can wake up with me. I try to do things, you know, not too heavy, but, you know, we get into stuff and we have a good time. 6 to 9 every morning, News Talk 720, KDWN. Go to allenstock.com or kdawn.com and see the things I write and I post.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you for you too. I appreciate it.